Here we are. Where are my other glasses? So anyway, good morning, Asia. Good morning, Thailand. Good morning, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. Good morning, you all, and more. Good morning, Australia, New Zealand, and all you islands down there, and then of course the rest of the world. Good evening. It's yeah, that's where I am right now. I'm in the rest of the world. Anyway, so let's get down to it. I'm in. See, is everybody joining us? Yeah. Hello. Social comments display here. Okay. Everybody's here. Good. Fantastic. I can't tell. Okay. All right. Anyway, let's get going because a lot of good questions. Listen, let me see if I can find that question even anymore. There was a question. There's a question about. Well, hey everybody, New York, beautiful. Upstate New York, Ohio, California. All right. All right. We're all waking up. Good evening and good morning, Asia. Anyway, yeah. Listen, it was very odd. I think we have enough people here. I can start talking, right? You got enough people? I can't tell. Can't tell anymore. But all right. So anyway, I'm going to start. There was one post, I guess, that went up this week, last week, and it was something about, can you load PowerPoint presentation in the LinkedIn platform like you can do in Zoom meeting? Oh, I don't know. I wish I could do PowerPoint here because I'd love to show you guys some research and things like that. We got to figure out a way to do that. If anyone knows how to do that, where we can have a big forum like this, and I can use what do you call it? PowerPoint or anything else that I need to do. Like I like to show research. I love to show research. When I consult with people, I usually show them research because I don't want you to believe anything I say. Now, we have to get down to something. This is really amazing. Excuse me. Some people got very upset from a post I made, and I'm not even sure of the post. It must have been something. I was talking about our natural food, our natural diet being plants, and somebody else wrote me a letter, kind of a letter, telling me that I was a bully, and that I was making everyone feel bad because of the way because I was telling you what I have found out, what I know about eating animals. So anyway, if I made someone feel bad, I apologize. I don't want anyone to feel bad. That's not my intent. But it's interesting if you feel bad because of the way I word things. Like for example, if instead of calling it animal flesh meat, if I call it animal flesh or corpse, and it makes you feel bad, then maybe there's something inside of you that doesn't quite resonate with eating animal corpse. Because, or if you didn't care, if you don't care about it, if you think it's okay, then it shouldn't make you feel bad, no matter how I say it. So anyway, I don't really mean to make anyone feel bad. I'm just telling you the way I look at it, and I think it's realistic to call it a corpse, and not to call it a beef or a pork chop or a nugget. Just call it what it is. In other languages they do, like in Thai, it's nua. Nua means flesh, animal. It means muscle, but it also means meat. So they kind of call it what it is. So we can do that. We can do that. We can call it that. Anyway, I don't mean to be a bully. That's not what I intend to do at all. I just trying to. So I explained to that person. I responded back to that person, and I explained that you don't have to be a vegan to be healthy. If the waterways were clean and the oceans were clean, which they're not, okay? The oceans are, as I said before, it's probably safer to eat out of your toilet than to eat out of the oceans. They're so dirty right now. And then most of the waterways, rivers used to be clear, now they're brown. But anyway, if you could find somehow a fish, and it probably would be okay, and eggs. I would never say dairy, but anyway, and you could probably be really, really healthy. And I've met people that, Japanese who eat a little bit of fish and lots of vegetables, and they live a very long time, and they're pretty healthy. But that's not our optimal. Our optimal is 950 years about. That's where we can live to. And that was the Adam and Eve diet. You're all familiar with that story, right? Genesis 1:29. It's pretty clear on what we should eat. But anyway, let me get back to what I was trying to say. Anyway, I don't mean to make people feel bad, but so for me, not eating is more of an ethical situation. Of course, eating animals is, when we look at the studies, all cause mortality in vegetarians versus non. It's clear. It's clear. Even Seventh-day Adventists who are eating, pasta and pizza and bread and things like that, and they still have less cardiac, less nervous system, strokes, less cancer. Yeah, but anyway, you can still lead a nice, healthy life and be and eating maybe some eggs and some fish. However, for me, it's an ethical thing, and the way I look at it is, if I don't have to. If what I'm going to eat did not arrive at my plate through some form of violence, I'm happier. I feel better. I feel like I can eat it with a peaceful heart. If something had to be murdered, and I know that animals just don't volunteer for this project of feeding our tongues. So anyway, I don't know what to say to you guys. And then a few of you said, you didn't like my analogy of a rabbit and an apple with a playpen, because someone said, well, a baby can't eat an apple anyway. I know, but he would lick it, or she would lick it and smell it. And then somebody else said, yeah, but babies put anything in their mouth. They put rocks in their mouth. Okay. So anyway, the point was, it's not our natural instinct to try and eat an animal, and it's not our natural instinct to eat a corpse. It's not. And I think eating corpses is what brought about the black art of cooking, right? So anyway, and remember, you don't really like. I only know one person who eats raw chicken. So I'm saying, what I wanted to say is that you guys don't really like flesh. You like the way it's prepared, and the sauces and the flavorings and the spices, right? So it's not really the flesh you like. It's not like you would like to grab a dead cow and eat it. So anyway, let's not keep talking about that stuff. Um, yeah, I don't mean to be a bully, so thank you. Anyway, there's that. And then the other thing was the person was talking about oxalates. And I'm going to do a story. I'm going to redo a visit to oxalates. Okay. And I may, I'm not going to be in harmony and resonating with David Wolf and some of the other people now that are saying, oh, these are no longer superfoods. Kale is not a superfood. Broccoli is not a superfood. These are bad foods. They've got oxalates. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to address that subject in detail with tons of research just to show you that that's absolutely not true. And even if I didn't look at the research, I want to tell you something. Our clinic here in Arizona has been around 18 years. Before that, I was in New York about five years doing the same kind of thing. But anyway, we serve celery, cucumber, kale, spinach, oxalates, lemon, and apple. Bad. And my staff been drinking it at least a quart a day, 5 days a week for 15 years, 18 years, however long they've been there. People that go on our juice cleanses do it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I did it for while working for about a month. I should have gone longer, but I had to travel, so I couldn't do it any longer. But it feels fantastic. And we've never had oxalate stones. We've never had calcium oxalate stones. And oxalosis is really a condition that arises from basically a genetic defect. You're born with a genetic defect, and your body produces too much oxalates. It's not from dietary sources. And it's usually this gets usually diagnosed early in life as when you're a child. So anyway, I won't get into all of that, but anyway, no matter how you do it, are you MD or DO? I'm an Emma Salah Hedon. I am an MD, medical doctor. So, do you have dogs? I have cats. I have 3 incredible cats. I've had dogs all my life. Anyway, so let's get into it, you guys. Let's answer your questions. Cause they are good. I like them. If I can find them. Where are we? There we are. Let's bring this over here. Come on. Bear with me 1 second, you guys. I'll be okay. Okay. Where are the questions? Is that the questions? No. There's the questions. Yay. Okay. So, what can be done for this is from an Instagram question. This is what can be done for intrauterine growth retardation in second trimester? Blood flows are good. Well, yeah. Okay. So anyway, you said the blood flows are good. So I'm assuming you mean in the placental blood flows and all that. So this is not one of our usual topics, but it was somebody needs the answer. So as you know, intrauterine growth retardation. There's 2 basic causes, right? It's either the fetus, or it's the maternal. There's some sort of problem, and the maternal is very often due to placenta, and there's all kinds of placental problems. You have low-lying placentas, right? They're right near the os, right near the cervix. like within 20 millimeters, or they completely cover it, which is they have a different name for that, placenta previa. And then there's a placenta accretia where it gets embeds really hard and stuff. There's all kinds of problems. And you can get a situation where the blood accumulates underneath it and all that sort of thing. And that can result in IUGR, which is um, intrauterine growth retardation. So anyway, the mother, so what can be done for this? The mother, um, some of the situations that go on with the mother is if the mother has, high blood pressure or has some other chronic condition, um, that that contributes a lot. And of course, if the mother's taking in any toxins at all into her body, that's going to affect it a lot. And so so what the mother needs to do is get as healthy as possible, keep the colon clean, get to sleep as early as possible, like 8 o'clock. Um, drink at least a liter or two of green, really healthy, delicious, fresh juice a day, and eat really, really healthy. Eat a wide variety of plants, eat tons of seeds and nuts and chia porridge and things like that, and just get yourself as healthy as possible. Clean out. You can't not eat. You can't go on a fast when you're pregnant, of course, but you can drink lots of juices and flood yourself. Remember, a juice cleanse is the reason we call it a juice feast and not a juice fast, is because you're getting all the nutrients, all the there's 3 macronutrients: fats, carbs, and amino acids, right? So you're only not getting the fats, but you're getting the carbs and the amino acids. You're also getting all of the phytonutrients, all the vitamins, and all the chelated minerals that come up. So you're getting everything in vast amounts, much more than you would get from just eating, because you couldn't eat that many vegetables. So drinking that and eating this, just get super healthy. That's all you can do. Now, I don't know, you said blood flows are good. I don't know if you've had vaginal bleeding or anything like that, but and then the other final thing it can be is something genetic going on. And so anyway, I'm sure you know all this, so I don't think I helped you too much. But anyway, that was what I wanted to tell you, because so let's see what our next question is. How come I keep losing it? There it is. My gosh. Okay. There we go. Next question. What do you recommend to put on routers in the home that limit EMS? Yeah, well, that's a interesting situation, because why do we want to limit EMF in the first place? You all know why, right? Okay, electromagnetic frequencies. They're different than, so let's talk about electromagnetic frequencies. There are some that are like the ultraviolet, the visible light, microwave, infrared, radio, and the extremely low frequency. These are all non-ionizing. In other words, they don't have enough energy to knock electrons out of molecules, out of atoms, and cause damage. So ionizing radiation does. And ionizing radiation is, what you get if you're going to get radiotherapy, radiation therapy for cancer, right? That's what they do. They use ionizing radiation. That's the kind of radiation you get also when you go you go to Chernobyl or you go to Fukushima. Okay. Well, EMFs are not that, so they're not knocking things out, but they do something else. They paralyze the voltage-gated calcium channels on our cells. And calcium needs to go back and forth in our cells all the time. It's essential for functioning. So when the electromagnetic frequencies paralyze these voltage-gated calcium channels, and calcium just pours in like 1 million molecules of cations per second. All right, that's how quick they go, 1 million per second. Now, when they go in, they stimulate the production of nitric oxide, and then they mix with the nitric oxide and they produce peroxynitrates. Nitrites, you've heard of them, perhaps. And then they turn into what are called hydroxyl radicals. Now, the hydroxyl radical is probably the most damaging of all the radicals that we get into our bodies, into biological systems. Okay, the hydroxyl radical is OH negative, and in fact, it accumulates all day in our bodies. It's always it just accumulates. It's one of the biological biochemical intermediates involved that gets involved in when we're making energy in the mitochondria. All right. It also is it's constantly being produced, and when it does, um, it causes damage because it will grab anything next to it and destroy it. Okay, this is so for that reason, God gave us the ability and the requirement of producing 10 liters per day of molecular hydrogen. We've talked about that before. So molecular hydrogen, which is H2, will penetrate. Hey, Barry. Wow. So what do you got? Um, anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the molecular hydrogen penetrates all cells. All cells. It's the smallest molecule in the world, in the universe. Penetrates it. When that H2 gets that OH negative, it turns into H2O, which is water. So it's beautiful. It's a specific antioxidant. So our body makes 10 liters of that at night, a day. 10 liters a day, right? Now, the other thing that our body does, under the auspices of the divine, is um, at nighttime when the lights go out, we produce melatonin. Our pineal glands produce melatonin. And melatonin, each melatonin molecule will grab 4 hydroxyl radicals. So the melatonin establishes the sleep cycle, the circadian rhythm, gets you going to sleep, and then it becomes the night janitor and goes up and cleans up all these metabolic wastes, and stimulates T cells and natural killer cells, etc. So it's just magical stuff. But anyway, so that's what happens with EMF, and this is the way we're naturally able to take care of it. So anyway, if you're exposed to EMF, one of the things you might want to do is get molecular hydrogen anyway, and you can get a molecular hydrogen machine, or you can get, which will make it out of water, or you can get the tablets. Mercola has one that I use because it's very easy. You just drop 3 tablets in a big glass of water in the morning, drink it, and then maybe in the afternoon again. It lasts about 3 or 4 hours, and especially if you have a job where you're sitting next to a computer, or you're getting exposed to EMF, do it. But anyway, so what are they using? They're using router guards, and the problem with router guards is that if they work, the better that a router guard is like a cage they put around a router, and that is basically a Faraday cage. And a Faraday cage is they use it in electronics, like when they have to keep an electronic system free from any exposure or influence by anything else. They put it in a Faraday cage, right? I mean, if you put your phone in a Faraday cage, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't pick up signals, and it wouldn't sense signals. So so the problem with the router guard is that if it's really perfectly great and blocks everything, your router won't work. And then some companies say, well, yeah, we block the EMF, but you still have normal service. Well, that's impossible because the service requires the EMF. So that's not true. But what usually happens if you put a guard around it is that when you walk away, I mean, the further you get, like before maybe you'd have access to your Wi-Fi, I don't know, way back in the other room, and now you won't be able to, or something, so it decreases the radius. Okay. And so that's the problem with these things. So my advice for the EMF is that when you use it when you have to use it, Try to keep all that use in one room of the house. If you have multiple rooms, keep it in one room of the house, and turn it off when you're not using it. Just unplug it, turn it off. Don't just turn it off. Now, if you live in an apartment building, if you live in a condominium, you're in trouble because you can't. I mean, even if you turn yours off, you're getting exposed to other people. So what would you'd have to really do if you lived in a condo or lived in an apartment? Um, Thank you, Cheryl. Um, is actually people do this. They make a Faraday bed and a cage, at least so you can go to sleep without getting bombarded. You can actually make it. Now, Faraday cage or Faraday equipment, and they're making Faraday clothing right now, is just conducting wire like copper or something else and silver threads, right? And they're going in one direction, and they just that blocks the EMF. So anyway, that's that. So it's really, I mean, it's really hard. So my advice is use the if you want to have good reception and get your job done and get around, you can't use too much. You can put a small cage on it. It's going to decrease it, but it's not going to stop it, because if you actually stopped uh, the EMF from coming out of the router, then the router wouldn't be receiving any either, and so it wouldn't work. So it's just kind of one of those things that if we make a choice to use these devices that require electromagnetic frequencies, we're going to be exposed to some degree. So we have to protect ourselves by using the by taking extra melatonin at night and molecular hydrogen. And as soon as you're done, unplug it. You don't need it on when you don't need it on. All right. What would be a good treatment in combination with methylene blue for cancer? Well, a good treatment in combination would be ultraviolet blood irradiation. I mean, methylene blue, as you know, is can be activated by light, by red light, at 680 nanometers, 650 nanometers, around there, in the red light, far infrared, and near red, will activate the methylene blue. So, a lot of times we can paint it on a lesion, a tumor, and expose that to the light, and the light will then it will get activated and produce a lot of free radicals and destroy the tumor. That's what will happen. But it also turns out, see, the mechanism of action of, well, first of all, methylene blue was synthesized by a chemist in the 1870s, a German chemist, and to use as a dye for clothing and things like that. And it was soon discovered that you could use it for staining cells when you're looking at cells. So the scientists, when they were using the microscope, the biologists, they could stain the cell, and they could actually see the organelles inside of it, and they were able to see that. They also found they could see parasites, and they could see other microorganisms much better. So it became like it's normal part of a laboratory now. Any kind of microbiological laboratory they all have methylene blue right now. So it's methylthioneum chloride is what it is, but it's a synthesized thing. It's not a natural occurring, right? And then, but anyway, what it does, one of the thing that it does so incredibly is, remember we talked about redox biochemistry as being how life exists on from a biological level, right? The difference between a rock and a frog, pretty much might have very similar molecules. But what's the difference? Well, the frog is able to extract from its environment nutrients in the form of gas, such as oxygen and a glucose, which is in a plant or something, and together produce ATP, which is energy, and electrons. And it's able to produce these electrons, and the electrons are exchanged by molecules that give them off and molecules that accept them. It's kind of like a relay race, the givers and the takers, and they work together. And that's how we have electrical currents in our body, and that's how we're alive. And when those electrical currents stop and we have a flat line on our EKG, our EEG, or muscle, it's dead. That organ is dead. And if it's your brain and it's dead, or your heart, So anyway, so it's this. Yeah, Ethernet's Ethernet's a good thing, you guys. Anyway, so that's redox biochemistry. It's the exchange of them. And one of the reasons that ascorbate or vitamin C is so important is because it's an electron donor. So it gives electrons. But anyway, so what methylene blue is it's able to do that exchange with electrons. So if you recall, we've always talked about the mitochondria as being central in the initiation and progression of this chronically fermenting process that's known, but the Rockefeller word is cancer, but let's try not to use that. So I don't know if we have any new people on, so I don't want to I want to make sure they understand. So everybody understand cancer. And even if we're going to use the word cancer, let's turn it around and call it RECNAC. RECNAC sounds a lot better. There's no emotional punch with it. It's a much better word, RECNAC, or chronically fermenting cells. But anyway, so the process of this developing, of this problem developing, of this adaptive response developing, is when a certain percentage of the mitochondria are destroyed or rendered dysfunctional. So when that happens, the cell has to go into a default mode of energy production called glycolysis or fermentation. So anyway, inside of the mitochondria, there are like 4 systems, protein systems, cytochrome systems, that are involved in this taking the electrons. Remember, oxygen comes in and glucose comes in to the mitochondria. And oxygen is held together, 2 oxygen atoms are held together by these really incredible electrons. The same with glucose, it's got electrons in there. Anyway, together they just produce a lot of electrons. So the mitochondria are a mechanism of taking out these electrons and saving them and putting them onto ATP so that the person can use them later when they need them for all of their enzymes, etc. So anyway, it turns out methylene blue can do that. So if one of those protein cytochrome systems is knocked out, is for some reason not working, the methylene blue will take over. So this is what happens. They use it in emergency rooms. If you're poisoned, if you get cyanide poisoning, right? Cyanide poisoning, knocks out those electron transfer systems inside of the mitochondria. And if you take methylene blue, it's going to correct it and save your life. So it's really, really important in that. It's also, they're finding that it works with Alzheimer's, it works with Parkinson's, it works with depression. It like gets rid of depression more than this. The whole idea with serotonin, because right now, and a lot of you may have been prescribed serotonin reuptake inhibitors, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, like Prozac and all the Lexapro, whatever their names are. I don't pay attention because I don't use them. I don't give them to. I would never prescribe them to anybody. I would want someone to, if we think that there's a serotonin problem, then let's correct your gut microbiome so that you can produce more serotonin, right? So anyway, methylene blue is amazing in that area, but the main thing that it's doing is allowing the exchange of electrons. It's restoring mitochondrial function, and that's the problem with when we have chronically fermenting cells. So it's a big deal. But it also, just like ascorbate, vitamin C, which is an antioxidant because it donates electrons to quench or to neutralize free radicals. Well, if the ascorbate when ascorbate donates an electron to iron or copper in their 3+ state, remember copper and iron both have a 3+ and a 2+ state. The 2+ state is the active form. The 3+ state is not quite. Okay, so when it gives an electron to a 3+, it becomes a 2+, and that produces hydrogen peroxide and all sorts of other free radicals. So the yeah yeah. So the can't the I was just reading SSRIs. I was on them once upon a time. Yeah, so that's this tragic thing because most doctors, when they don't have an answer for a person who's come to them for help, when they don't have an answer, they do one of two things are their most favorite. You guys might be able to understand this and relate to this. What are the two favorite things that allopaths, MDs love to do when they don't know what to do? Steroids. They give you steroids. It's going to shrink. It's going to make you feel better for a while. You're going to, get giddy and all that stuff for a while. Then you're going to get really sick. But that's what they do because it works in that to make you not. It helps with pain and swelling and all that sort of thing. And the other thing they do is they go, well, listen, it's all in your head because if it, my blood tests show that there's nothing wrong with you, so it's all in your head. So you need some antidepressants. That's it. So antidepressants and steroids are the biggies. Yeah. So um, yeah. So the other thing about methylene blue, which is really interesting, is that if you have a fish tank and you put a couple drops in, it prevents any fungus from overgrowing. You can use it with your pets so that if they have any fungal infections or they like on their skin and stuff like that. Methylene blue is amazing, but it eliminates a nasty microscopic colonization of different parts of the body that you don't want. Um, yeah, yeah, steroids are bad news. They're bad news. They work in the very short term to decrease symptoms, but they have nothing to do with the underlying cause. And these are what doctors do. This is what allopaths do. And of course, if they don't know what's going on, then it probably is not worth knowing about because they would have learned it in school because they went to one of the best medical schools in the world. So if they hadn't heard about it, then it probably doesn't matter and it's all in your head and blah, 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 right? And you can eat anything you want and you can, yeah. Yeah. The methylene blue does other things too. It inhibits nitric oxide. It inhibits um, um, it's called guanylate synthase, which is really important for so you don't have too much cyclic GMP. And the reason that's important is because when someone has a chronically fermenting condition, the cyclic AMP and the cyclic GMP ratio is reversed. So the more GMP you have, the more you're likely to be having the chronically fermenting conditions. But the guanylate cyclase, which is um, slowed down with methylene blue, which is pretty cool, pretty cool. Increases the NAD to NADH ratio. In other words, you get more NAD plus, right? NAD plus, right? A lot of people, a lot of functional doctors are giving NAD plus, right? And then you can also take oral precursors that increase your likelihood to make to make your own NAD. But as you get older, you make less and less NAD. And again, NAD plus and NADH, that ratio is very important. It's the reduced form, the oxidized form versus the reduced form, and NADP, NADPH, NADP plus, and NADPH, right? Those ratios, all those ratios determine your redox status, and that's essential to understand your condition of health. So that could be done. So the question here is what could be done for Parkinson's? Well, again, methylene blue is amazing, and you can do it intravenously, up to like 2 milligrams per kilo. Um, but and sometimes they even go higher. For Parkinson's, also intravenous glutathione is amazing. You can watch someone with Parkinson's who's pretty much advanced, like just turn around and like become normal on intravenous glutathione and all that, because basically it's thought that Parkinson's, the fundamental defect, the thing that's going on is that the cells, and there's a part of the brain called the substantia nigra where those cells stop lose the ability to produce glutathione, so they can't detoxify. And so that's what happens. So if you can give them glutathione, and then there's many things you can do with Parkinson's. But anyway, and methylene blue, anti-malarial, gets rid of depression. It's just pretty magical stuff. And you can take a few drops every day, a couple times a day. It's really good. It's going to help clear you up. It helps with cognition, memory, just like it helps people with Alzheimer's. It helps with cognition and memory. But it's very important for photodynamic therapy. And if you can get up to the red range after you've given the so especially on a tumor that is either breast or skin or something you can expose to the light. Now there's a Dr. Weber, you may have heard of a Weber device where he used intravenous laser therapy, and he would put in the red and the different kinds of wavelengths of light, and he was his what he's saying he's doing is he's sending that light all throughout the body so that you can get into deeper structures. You can activate the methylene blue from deeper structure in deeper structures. And it's not always methylene blue. There might be other pigments that can be used, right, in photodynamic therapy. Yeah, so pretty amazing stuff. One of there was some work done with the combination of alpha lipoic acid and methylene blue. Okay, so think about it. Now, alpha lipoic acid enhances pyruvate going into the mitochondria, meaning instead of the cell going towards fermentation, right, these chronically fermenting cells, it kind of stops them from doing that and pushes the pyruvate into the mitochondria. So now it's got to go through the old-fashioned way, because these chronically fermenting cells, cancer cells, also have mitochondria. They just prefer not to use them, and they don't have as many, and they're shrunken and all of that, but they still have them. So it forces them up. So if you're doing that with alpha lipoic acid, and then you're using the methylene blue to get in there, and so that once the pyruvate gets in there, it forms into acetyl-CoA, and then goes down the pathway, the Krebs cycle, and produces all this energy. Now, but it's doing that in the mitochondria, so the methylene blue goes in there too and helps it, just keeps it moving. So the combination of the alpha lipoic acid and the methylene blue are amazing. The synergy is amazing and very helpful for anybody with any kind of chronically fermenting condition. The other thing I would recommend for that at the same time, is dichloroacetate, DCA. You've all heard of DCA. It's a very small molecule. It's used for children who were born with, they have a defect at that area in the pyruvate dehydrogenase. And they are always in a state of acidosis, lactic acidosis. They wake up in the morning and they feel like they just ran a marathon. They're just aching all over like that, right? Anyway, the DCA blocks that because it blocks the same thing. It blocks the pyruvate dehydrogenase kinase, and therefore it sends the pathway, the energy pathway, back into the mitochondria. So if you're using DCA and you're using alpha lipoic acid and methylene blue, wow. And then imagine this. Now, if you have if you can do either a cholestoxin or you can do whole body systemic hyperthermia, where you actually stimulate mitochondrial proliferation, right? The other thing is there's two peptides. So we're talking about mitochondria. How do we restore mitochondrial function, since that is the main fundamental thing that gets impaired, that results in a chronically fermenting condition? How do we restore that? Well, we restore it with DCA, alpha lipoic acid, methylene blue, and hyperthermia, getting your body so hot that it produces heat shock proteins which stimulate mitochondrial proliferation. Okay, so now you've got more mitochondria, you do all this stuff. And then, of course, you've got to be eating really healthy, right? If you're eating healthy, then you're going to have the right fats and everything, because remember, we have to produce a fat called cardiolipin. And cardiolipin sits right at if you look inside the mitochondria, they have these folds like that, right? And right up in like here's the fold. I mean, here's the outpocketing, and then in there is the fold. Right up there at the center part of that fold is a fatty acid called cardiolipin, and cardiolipin is fundamental to getting the whole thing oxidative phosphorylation, the energy production inside the mitochondria, right? And so what happens is as you age or get sick, that or if you're not eating human food, that cardiolipin starts to get oxidized, and as it gets oxidized, the mitochondria, that part opens up, and then it becomes way less efficient at producing energy. And you get really hard making energy, right? Chronic fatigue, any illness is going to be is always associated with fatigue. But anyway, so there is a peptide called SS31, and you can do that, and that's also very good. SS31 is going to tighten that back up so that you can get efficient working of your mitochondria. And then there's one other peptide that's very helpful in this quest to make the mitochondria restored, and that is MOTC. Okay, MOTSC. All right, it's another one. And what that does actually is it stimulates the mitochondria to produce a protein that goes to the nucleus, and then the nucleus comes back and turns on the antioxidant systems within the mitochondria, so it protects the mitochondria. So it's a way of protecting mitochondria. It's just amazing. So if we could do all these things, and we've got to do the peptides continuously, right? The methylene blue you can be sipping and drinking it on a daily basis, and then when you get therapies with it, you'll get the DCA IV, you'll get the ALA you could have taken orally every day, and then you can get it IV, DCA IV, the ALA IV, and then the methylene blue IV, and then go into hyperthermia, or do that, then go into hyperthermia, because hyperthermia is a 6-hour process. So if you're doing it right, and I don't know any places doing it right, except people who learned from Dr. Kobayashi. So anyway, that's that. Methylene blue, yay. How do you suggest I handle my polycythemia vera? All right, so anyway, polycythemia vera is it's a condition that's grouped in what they call myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS. And myelo refers to the bone marrow, certainly, especially a certain part of the bone marrow. And dysplastic means it's not, it's not working right. It's slowed down, it's sluggish, it's scarring down, it's not responding right. It's almost like you're getting there's a change in the cells. It's just not working right? So now what's in the bone marrow? And this is in the bone marrow. So what's in the bone marrow? You got the red blood cells, you got the white blood cells, the progenitors of the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. And so anyway, so myelodysplastic syndromes have been always known to be what they used to call them pre-leukemic, because they could turn into leukemia. So but the polycythemia vera is the problem is that they get increases in all 3 lines, or decreases in all 3 lines, right? And if you get the increases, like too many red blood cells, you can get strokes, you can get heart attacks. It can be really terrible. So one of the treatments they do is bloodletting. Just they call it phlebotomy. You just go in and get some blood taken out, and so that's how they handle it. But with the polycythemia vera, only about 2 to 4% can actually can turn into any kind of leukemia. So it's very low chance of it happening. But what do you have to do? What I recommend for this sort of thing is Hyperbaric oxygen. Hyperbaric oxygen is just incredible in this situation. Okay, so you go in the hyperbaric, and you've got to get those machines. You can't go into the um, you're welcome. You can't go into the thank you. You know those hyperbaric units that are kind of made of like that, I don't know what you call it, canvas material, like the same kind of material that they make tents with. So they have them like that, but those can only go up to like 1.3 atmospheres. Not really strong enough to allow for higher pressures. And with any kind of situation like this, you want at least 2.2 atmospheres. So with 2.2 atmospheres, and you go in there like 5, 6 times a week for an hour, that's fantastic. Do that. Okay. Um, we want to get oxygen in there. Also, if you've got this situation called polycythemia vera, uh, you want to just get as healthy as you can. You want to detoxify your body, clean your colon. You want to move around. You just want to be healthy. Remember, in all of these conditions, and we can put names on them. Right? We have names, right? We call this polycythemia vera. We call this leukemia. We call this ductal carcinoma in situ. We call this uh, adenocarcinoma of the ovary, adenocarcinoma of the colon, adenocarcinoma of the prostate, whatever we're going to call it. It's all the same thing. It's basically biologically the same thing going on. And what we need to do is get rid of all toxins, all waste products, and all that. And as we age, I mean, I'm talking from by the time you end your teenage years, you're into your 20s, already you've slowed down in your ability to eliminate toxins. Okay. Um, and unfortunately nowadays, young children are already toxic. We're seeing incredible amounts of obesity and really sickness because they're getting injected with these things, with these chemicals, these evil chemicals, right? They're getting injected with it as at young age. I mean, it's just crazy. They get that, and then you feed them non-food. You feed these kids food, what they call food, but it comes from a package. And remember, if it's food, you don't need a packet. You don't need a label, right? You don't need a label. Why would you need a label? Do you need a label for a banana? You need a label for a tomato? You don't need a label. If you need a label, then there's something hidden, right? uh, Children married. Yeah, there's a question coming in here, but yeah, not married anymore. It's been a while since I've been married, but children are grown, and my son eats pretty good, and that's about it. But he eats really good. He's really good. So he's never eaten a corpse, so that's kind of cool. Um, anyway, uh, so these poor kids. So look at them. We're seeing 8 years old, 9 years old with diabetes type 2. What? What? Diabetes type 2 in a child? Well, that's because they're being destroyed. Can you imagine being born and then you immediately start getting injections, and then whatever is in the formulas and stuff like that, and then even if you're having your mother's breast milk, I don't know how many chemicals have been found in mother's breast milk. How many? 250, 300, of these really seriously damaging chemicals in breast milk. So because we're living in there's an all-out war. But if you guys don't know it, there's an all-out war well, I just have to say against humans. Yeah, there's a war against humans, and the goal is to get us down to 500 million genetically modified cyborgs. Um, as you know, cyborgs can interface with artificial intelligence. Yeah, and that's kind of the goal. And it's been going on for quite a while. It's in our food and everything like that. So, anyway, everybody, you know what? It's time to wake up and stand up and scream. this. Let this know. It's, no longer can we sit back and be silent about this, because what is at stake is the human race. Nothing less than that. The human race is at stake. I know a lot of you get really angry when I talk about these things, but how do you not talk about it? Suppose I get really healthy and then they come along and do their thing. It didn't matter. All right. So it's part of being alive. It's part of being healthy is to avoid, just like you don't go walking out in the middle of a freeway, right? You don't go walking out in the freeway. You're not going to walk out in the freeway because you don't want to get slammed and killed. Well, the same thing's happening here on all levels. So you got to watch out what you're eating and everything, and what you're breathing. I mean, gosh, where I live, there's no chemtrails. Anyway, so just going back to the other thing is everyone is the the maitake and shiitake, but maitake is really really good. You know, and especially with people who have, like, if you have a low white count because of chemotherapy or because of radiotherapy, if you have a low white count and all that, you can increase monocytes, you can increase neutrophils with maitake. Yeah, so the medicinal mushrooms are very important. Really, really important. There's a lot of research, a ton of research that the Japanese have been researching this for a long time. Agaricus blazei, really important. Turkey tail. You all know about these things. Maitake, shiitake. So they're all very, very important for stimulating the immune cells, stimulating the white blood cells, etc. And the other one is vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 does the same kind of thing. And especially with myelodysplastic syndrome, it's very, very helpful. Okay. And myelodysplastic is a crazy kind of thing. So you really have to do something. You really have to actively be healthy. And remember something. I don't know why it's a secret, but it is for some reason. It's a big secret. And the secret is this, that health can only be obtained via healthy living. I mean, there's not another way. You cannot negotiate it. You cannot coerce it. You cannot buy it. Health is something you earn from living a healthy life. It's something you earn. It's the consequence of living healthy, period. So all of us, because we all have smoldering degenerative conditions happening inside of us, because we're alive on the planet with gravity, and we're exposed to all sorts of stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So living healthy. You all know what that is. That means going to bed early. That means moving around all day and all that. Yeah. Yeah, LDN, agreed. LDN, low dose naltrexone. Start with 3 milligrams. You go up to 4.5 milligrams before sleep. I got to do a whole thing on low dose naltrexone. Very, very important. The only people that can't take it is people who are unfortunately taking narcotics for pain, like opiates for pain. They're going to be in trouble, because if they take the low dose naltrexone, it'll reverse their pain medicine. They'll be in pain suddenly. So, yeah. Multiple myeloma strategies to stay in remission. Yeah. Well, again, multiple myeloma again is another of the same. It's this chronically fermenting cells that are in have to do with the bone marrow, which is because multiple myeloma is the production of the B cells, and they produce plasma cells. The plasma cells produce these M proteins and things like that. So that's multiple myeloma. One of the ways of keeping that from happening, and I don't know if you all can try to find a doctor, and it's probably going to have to be a holistic or integrative doctor who has what they call double filtration plasmapheresis. And if you do that, if you got multiple myeloma or anything like that, or even any type of chronically fermenting condition, whether it's breast, pancreas, and all that, and no matter what you're doing, it's just not working. Well, if you were to do a blood test called serum protein electrophoresis, you would see that your alpha 1 spike is really high, and then your albumin is low, and on. Well, if that's high, that means it's got immunosuppressive proteins in there. So what you do is you go through and you do the plasmapheresis, and basically your blood goes through these two filters, double filtration plasmapheresis, and comes back into you and cleans out all those immunosuppressive agents, proteins. It's just incredible. And we're getting one here in the U.S., and I'm going to have them at my centers in Thailand, of course, and once a week while we're doing whatever we're doing, let's do that as well. Let's keep out these immunosuppressive proteins that get there. But it's really, really good for myeloma. Like if you did that, you could just, you'll be cool. So that's it. Do that. But the other thing with multiple myeloma is like anything else, you got to live really healthy. Intravenous vitamin C, amazing for multiple myeloma. Intravenous vitamin C, and take your remember, sip 7 to 7. Everybody knows that you sip 7 to 7. Thoughts on annual dermatology checkups? I mean, no, no. You know what they? It's not sun exposure, but it's the way you live. I mean, if you're eating really terribly, you're eating non-food, greasy non-food with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides in there. By the way, if it's not organic, it's got pesticides, herbicides, fungicides in it, right? And insecticides, and which happens to rhyme with suicide, genocide, infanticide. Yeah, right. So when the question comes up, should I eat organic, or organic so expensive? Yeah, but what is not now? Well, I know. They might say it's organic and it's still got some chemicals in it. True. But you have more of a chance of there not being poisons in something labeled certified organic than if it's not labeled. And if it's not labeled, they just whatever is in there. Yeah, but I know they're changing and now there's this new, what is it called? Aline. I don't know. It's a new Bill Gates bomb to the world. He's sealing the food, the vegetables, with some sort of substance. I can't remember what it's called, but it sticks to the food. It can't be scrubbed off. And he, of course, is, I mean, how, anyway, I can't talk about it, but anyway, anyway, I can't talk about it. I won't. Appeal. There you go. Appeal. What the heck? Appeal. Yeah, it's appealing to him and Klaus Schwab. They find it very appealing to put this on the food of other people. And you notice that King George, if you notice about him, King George, when he travels, brings a whole entourage and brings his own organic food that they grew far away from us, the proletariat, right? The proletariat and the serfs and the slaves, nah. So these guys aren't eating what we're eating, believe me. And they've got us addicted to, not me, but they've got a lot of us addicted to these non-foods, right? You got to understand. Okay. Bill Gates, great guy. Great guy. Great guy. I got to be careful. That's the thing. Anyway, I don't think you need a dermatology checkup. One thing that you can all do if you get a lesion that you think is like, there's squamous cell carcinomas, basal cell carcinomas, and then there's melanomas. Those are the main three fermenting situations that happen with skin. You can get ozonated olive oil. You apply that. You can get 5 or 10% Lugols, liquid Lugols, and paint it daily, a couple times a day. Uh, you can also get hydrogen peroxide. You can get you got to try to get up to about 9, 10, 12%, right? So you can get the what do you call it? The food grade, 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide, and then if you take equal parts of water and now you cut it in half, right? So now it's 17.5, right? Percent percent hydrogen peroxide, and then you cut that in half. Do it one more time. That's 8.75%, 8.25%, I think. What is it? 8.375, whatever it is. Um, and that's a good one. And then you paint a lesion wherever that lesion is several times a day with that. It'll kind of burn it off and get rid of it. So you don't have to do a lot. Or if you have if you have access to an ozone, you can bag that arm, or it's hard to, Of course, if you got a lesion here, you can't bag your head with ozone. So what's the next question? Green tea heavily contaminated with fluoride. Do we still drink it? Well, yeah, we do. We still drink green tea because when you want to make a list of things that you should of supplements you should use and to preserve your health, green tea is like on every list. It's just amazing. It's antioxidant potential, anti-inflammatory potential, anti-cancer potential. It's just fantastic. And neurologically, it's got theanine, so it kind of tones down our excitatory stress. It kind of mellows it out. So it just does many, many, many things. It's so important. But anyway, so the idea with green tea, see, green tea, like all teas, come from the same plant. It's just one plant. And whether or not it's green, black, or white teas just depends on what happened to the leaves. What did they do? How much were they oxidized? So with the black tea, what they do is they take the green leaves and they dry them out completely. So they get completely oxidized and they turn black. And then they roast them or whatever they do, and you come up with black tea. The green tea, they skip that part. They don't dry them out. They don't let them get oxidized. They just take the green leaves and they go straight to steaming them, right? They can steam them. Some people bake. Some places that make it will bake it, and some people even fry it, but I certainly wouldn't do that. But the steaming is how you get. So when you get green tea like sencha, that's what it should be made of, right? And then the white tea is the least oxidized of them all. Now, so in terms of fluoride, yeah, it's a this plant, the Clenorsus, is a senescens, is a bioaccumulator. So it'll pick up stuff that's in the soil. So it depends on how it's grown, right? And how organic, truly organic. When we say organic, in this we're talking about non-pesticides, right? Non-pesticides, fungicides, and all of that. And also using soil with lots of minerals and having worms and having lots of healthy bacteria in there. You need a really good healthy soil. And if you're doing that, you won't have any fluoride. But there was an interesting study where they looked at, and they obeyed all the rules of tea brewing. Like, for example, if you talk to anybody from Japan or China or Korea, about brewing tea, and in fact in Japan, they have a tea ceremony. It's like almost a religious type of ceremony. They take it very seriously. But anyway, when you pour tea and they treat it, one thing about Japanese, they have an extreme reverence and treat tea, rice, and soy. They don't mess with it. I mean, in terms of GMO and stuff like that. But anyway, so the fluoride, actually, there are other nasty minerals that could come up in the soil too. But anyway, there was a really neat study where they took and they looked at they took Chinese green tea, Japanese green tea, Korean green tea, and green tea from Sri Lanka. And I think they took like 2.5 grams of it and they heated it up. Now, the people that that know about green tea is that you only heat it up to 71 degrees centigrade, which is about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't go all the way up to boiling, because if you do that, you'll lose the sweet fragrance of the green tea and the flowery, delicious flavor, and it becomes more bitter. And you also extract more stuff out of it. So they don't do that, and they do it for the usual steeping time for green tea is so at 160 degrees Fahrenheit, not boiling. So you got to get one of those things that allows you to measure the temperature in your water. And the steeping is like anywhere from, I think, about 1 to 3 minutes. So the average they did 2 in this study. They did 2 minutes. So they steeped it for 2 minutes, and then they measured the fluoride content. And they used only organic. And the reason they used only organic teas is because they used the leaves, the leaves, and they steeped them. They put them in a steeper, right, like this, the thing like that. It's got a mesh basket. The reason they did is because synthetic pesticides have fluoride. So they had to make, so to avoid that, they did the organic. So they got organic Chinese, organic Japanese, organic Korean, organic Sri Lankan green tea. And they did that, 71 degrees centigrade, 160 Fahrenheit for 2 minutes, and then they measured the amount of fluoride in there. As it turns out, it's related to the amount of fluoride that's in the groundwater of these countries, right? And so, that'll tell you that if you want to grow it organic, maybe you can do it in a greenhouse, and where you control the soil and use water that's fresh and clean. But anyway, they found that the most fluoride was Chinese, number 2 the Korean, number 3 the Sri Lankan, and number 4 Japanese. And the numbers were pretty significant. The China had 6.83 parts per million. The what do you call it? The Koreans had 5 point something per million. Sri Lankans had 3 or something, and the Japanese had 1.8. So very low, very low. And that they were all organic from those countries. Okay, and so they were trying to figure out why. Maybe the water was fluoridated that they watered it with, or what. They don't know exactly why that happened. But they looked at the groundwater of these different countries, and it was in the same order. The most fluoride in China, in soil in China, then South Korea, and then Sri Lanka, and then Japan. So anyway, that's what we should do. And remember something, that the fluoride, there's no physiological requirement for fluoride. It's not like chloride. We need chloride. We need iodide. But we don't need fluoride. There's no physiology for it. There's nothing that's required to maintain life or anything like that. It's not required for cells. So so the great lie came out about you can form calcium fluoride. It'll mix with the calcium and form and make it more rigid, and so it's good for your dental health. Turns out to be absolutely false. It's the opposite. In fact, in communities where they have fluoridation, they have increased bone fractures and increased osteoporosis, brittle bones. The same with the teeth. And then if you have too much, they call it fluorosis, dental fluorosis, and then basic fluorosis is of the bones. That's when you're getting too much. So like a 70 kilogram male, a male or female, 70 kilogram human being would die if they got acute exposure to 10 grams. And then lesser amounts cause diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and stuff like that. That's in an acute exposure. But the continual slow exposure, we know that as fluoride combines with calcium, and it goes right into the pineal gland, and that's a bummer. Okay, because the pineal gland is where we make what? Melatonin. It's where we make ayahuasca or dimethyltryptamine, and it's where we make um, epithalin. Now, epithalin, I'm not sure you're familiar with that. Epithalamine, which is a peptide that basically, if you get that, you can purchase that. Um, Probably the only place in the States you can purchase it without having to go to some doctor and pay him extra money for it is to just go to peptidesciences.com, and you can order any kind of almost any kind of peptide you want. But the epithalin actually increases telomere length by a third. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Like to keep those telomeres long, right? Telomeres, the shorter they get, the less, then you get to the point where you can't, the cell can't reproduce anymore. So anyway, but the so the pineal gland produces the melatonin, which is really important. Right? Why? Because we know that blind people have less cancer, less chronically fermenting conditions than people who can see. We know that, right? So, and we know that the pineal gland can accumulate a lot of fluoride. Now, the reason is the pineal gland is a very special gland because it has to do with our circadian rhythm, which is really important because our circadian rhythm is kind of an objective way of looking at understanding our relationship with our mother, the earth. Okay. And so what's very interesting about the pineal gland is that the pineal gland it's second only to the kidneys in terms of blood flow. It's got all this blood flowing through it. The kidneys have a lot of blood flow because they're filtering it, and then and you produce urine as a result. So you've got much more blood flow through there than you do through the liver. The liver's getting it some other way, and all that. So, and the heart. Remember the heart. We're talking about blood flow through the organ, through the actual parenchyma or the actual functional units of an organ. Because you'd have to say, well, the heart has the most but it's not going into the heart muscle. It's just the heart is doing its action, right? So, but actually, the pineal gland is number 2 to the kidneys. So it gets all this blood flow, which is really important. It's like 4 milliliters per minute per gram of weight of the pineal gland. Now, the other thing that's interesting is you all may have heard of the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a kind of a complex tissue that does not permit everything that's in your blood to go through into the brain, into the cranium, right? Because it's got to be protected. So the blood-brain barrier is very important. So a lot of things don't get through into the brain. It's protected. But the pineal gland is outside of the blood-brain barrier, so it's getting everything. And remember, that's going to help, and that's why it can accumulate fluoride. So it can accumulate fluoride, and fluoride. What they have found, the studies have found, is that as the there's a relationship between the amount of fluoride it has and the amount of melatonin. That also means the amount of epithalin. Epithalamin controls the whole biochemistry of the pineal gland, including the melatonin production and all that sort of thing. So it's really important. And then the dimethyltryptamine is also very important for certain experiences in life, such as transcendental experiences, aha moments, love, the feeling of love, you know. So, and we have receptors in our brain for them. So very important, very important. So the pineal gland is very important, and it's thought that dimethyltryptamine, they call it the spirit molecule as well, and is released a lot at the time of our death, and it's kind of like the biochemical correlate or the biochemical mechanism by which um, the to account for the experience that someone goes through. Same thing happens in people that have near-death experiences. They produce a lot of um, uh, dimethyltryptamine. So dimethyltryptamine, by the way, is the molecule of that's used from the ayahuasca ceremonies when they take the two plants and you know and anyway, so very very important to keep the bread because the dimethyltryptamine is kind of the biological biochemical mechanism by which we have transcendental experiences. So who knows how it's working with our mind and our spirit and all that sort of thing. It's called the spirit molecule. But you don't want to, and that was originally, that's what they think was the third eye referred to the pineal gland. And you don't want that eye closed. You want to keep that eye wide open. Yeah. So let's see. What's the next question? Is it dangerous if vitamin D is in your body's too high? I mean, I don't know what you mean too high. 90 to 120 is good. I've several times found and it was up to 300. No big deal. I had somebody who checked theirs and it was like 800, 900, and they were okay. So I'm not saying you should have those levels. I'm just saying that you don't worry about it. But you want to keep it anywhere around 100. I think 100 is a good number to keep it at. I can go to 120 easily. Okay, so I read somewhere that you can get gallstones from fasting. Is there any truth to that? Well, here's the thing: gallstones and kidney stones, any kind of is precipitation. And precipitation occurs due to pH and to uh, volume of water. Okay, and you can easily understand that if you pour salt or sugar into a glass of water, it'll completely dissolve if you're doing it slowly. But it'll get to a point where you've saturated it, and now it will start to accumulate. The salt or sugar will start to accumulate on the bottom of the glass because you've reached the saturation point. So what do? You either take out some salt or sugar, or you add more water, and it'll go back into solution. Same kind of thing with these stones, whether that's or that. So if someone would get a gallstone from fasting, it's because they're not drinking enough water, and that's probably the biggest problem with fasting on water is people don't drink a lot because water gets pretty boring after 2 weeks. So you got to shake it up a little bit, Perrier, you know. Okay. What? If cancer starts 7 years before signs, can you stop and reverse it, not even knowing you had it? All right. Well, I think that's referring to. I must have said something about. Um, usually it's 8 to 10 years. If you have a cancer or you have this chronically fermenting condition, it began either somewhere around 8 to 10 years ago. Now you have to understand how what we call cancers, how they grow. So you need about 1 billion cells so to be big enough to be palpable so that you can touch it or uh, discoverable, right? To light up on PET scan and all that sort of thing. You need about 1 billion. So the way it works is it's called doubling time. So you get one cell. One cell becomes a fermenter. Now it divides. You got two. Two divide, you got four. Four divide, you got 8. And then you go to 16, 32, right? Okay. The doubling time is what you want to know about. Now, there was an interesting study that basically, when I say 1 billion, that means 1 gram. Okay, it's about 1 gram. And that's what Kobayashi said. He called, when he did his testing, his tumor marker combination assay, his TMCA 5 was 1 gram or more. And that means clinical cancer, clinical chronically fermenting cells, right? But the thing is that it turns out that different tissues have different doubling times. And you can understand that because, for example, your skin, you have new skin every 6 weeks, all new skin every 6 weeks. You have a new liver every 6 months. You have new lining to your digestive tract every 3 days. You have new retina, new rods and cones every 48 hours. So the body has got different doubling times, right? So when they looked at cancers, different locations, remember, there's no type of cancer. He's got this type, she's got that type. There's no type, there's only location. They want you to think there's types. They want you to think that it's genetic. They want you to think that it's extremely complicated and that your stage, what is your stage, and the grade and the stage, all that stuff is absolute nonsense and useless information, because the staging system, as I've explained before, is ridiculous. Okay, are we talking about macroscopic or microscopic staging? What are we talking about? Okay, so stage 1 is it's still in the original place that it formed, and it hasn't disturbed any of the architecture of the organ. Stage 2 is it's getting a little bigger and it's deforming some of the architecture of that organ, whether it's breast, prostate, pancreas, brain, whatever. Stage 3, it went into the lymphatics. Stage 4, it went into another organ. Well, as I've told you before, a breast tumor that peeks its head through the skin is now stage 4 because the skin's another organ, right? And that's very different than someone who's got, brain, lung, adrenal, so that's very different. You can't call them the same at all, and they're not the same. But what I'm saying is that if you have a little small nodule somewhere that is discoverable finally, then it's been there at least 8-10 years in most cases. Okay, so we talked about the doubling time, right? So you got 1 cell, and then it becomes 2. Okay, so I want to refer to this chart over here. What they found was they did all it's called a meta-analysis. They looked at many different studies, and then they kind of got the data from all of them. They summarized the data. So from pancreatic, the doubling time was a little over 5 months. Every 5 months it doubled. Okay, melanoma about 3.7. Primary hepatocellular carcinoma, which is liver cancer, 3.1. Kidney cancer, 2.67. Triple negative breast, 2.3. Every 2.3 months, it doubles. Non-small cell lung, 2.4 months. Every 2.4 months, it doubles. HR positive, hormone receptor positive breast, 4.3. HER2 positive, 4.1. Gastric, 3.8. Glioblastomas, 2.5. Prostate, 4.1. Yeah, so I mean, these are on the average. So that's the number of months it takes to double. So you can imagine, think about it. You got 1 cell and it's got to reach 1 billion, and it's doubling at every 4 months, right? So that's the way it works. That's what I meant by that. I'm not sure. What was the question again? The question was, what was the question? 7 years of repetitiveness. Yeah, I'm confused on how the 7 year thing works and what it means. Oh, okay. So you understand now, hopefully. If cancer starts 7 years before, well, no, the point is that's what's happening. And yes, most, I mean, most people, it's not even most anymore, half the people that don't get clinically diagnosed with this, have a spell put on them, um, uh, that's what happens. It never gets to the point where it can form 1 gram or more. And if it doesn't get to the point where it can form 1 gram or more, it's not a tumor. What should I do about a suspect mole? Well, I'm not sure what you have. I would have to look at it to give you a really good answer. But I would say you should. You can use, like I said, ozonated olive oil. You can paint on the um, what do you call it? You can paint on the Lugol solution. You can paint on um, a hydrogen peroxide. You can do that. You can ozonate it. You can do that, and not biopsy it, because if you're going to biopsy it and it has become chronically fermenting, so you're just going to spread it around. So don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Now, let's go to. Here's a good question. Postmenopausal for 15 years, is it still okay and beneficial to use estriol cream? Yes, because what you don't, the longer you've been away, the longer you've been in hormone um, deficiency, which is what menopause and andropause, that I was heir to. But what happens is the longer you're in andropause and menopause, the more your body is going to become less and less efficient at cleansing itself. You're going to get osteoporosis. You're going to oxidize much quicker. If you want to keep your aging so that it's not so dramatic, like I'm not ready to be as old as I really am. My chronology, I'm not ready to feel that way. It's like I feel like it snuck up on me, even though, I've been here for a few decades now, but I feel like it snuck up on me, and I'm not ready to be an old man. So I'm going to use biologically identical hormones and all the things that I need to do to maintain my youthfulness, my vigor, my vitality as long as possible. That's what it's all about. So yeah, so estriol is good, and the reason estriol for women is because it's the beta agonist, so it doesn't increase tumor growth in any kind of tumor. Okay, so let me go over to I've got to go. All right, so here we go. Instagram. This was again, okay. So do you start with a long-term fasting first or juice cleansing first? Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. When someone comes in, this was a question on regarding 95% of people who see us at an Oasis of Healing uh, embark on a green juice cleanse. Well, yeah, a cleanse. The problem with water fasting at the center is that if you do a water fast, then you can't get any IVs except for normal saline fluids. But you can't do, high dose of vitamin C. You can't do all these things. You could probably do some ozone, but that would be it. That'd be the only thing you could really do. You can't do, anything else heavily. You couldn't do intravenous curcumin. You couldn't do any of that. You certainly couldn't do IPT or anything like that. So it would be for a cleansing. If you just wanted to come in for a cleansing, then you could do a water fast, colon hydrotherapy, lymphatic therapy, exercise with oxygen therapy, hyperbaric, all none, infrared sauna for a while, not for too long, not for too many weeks, because you won't be able to. It'll wipe you out. But anyway, so that's why we do a green juice cleanse, and they just drink a lot of green juice, 3, 4, 5 liters. Is there anywhere in Thailand that you would recommend for healing? Yeah, hang on, and it'll be ready. We're hoping to open in November, December. I don't know. It's hard to say, but we're hoping to open about that. Right now, I don't know of any places. That's not to say that there aren't, but I just don't know of any that are really serious and have somebody there that's doing research, and that's just, I just don't see that. I don't see that. I see a lot of fashion spas, and it's fashionable. Okay, so I'm hoping you could address this in the next live. I'm currently dealing with Mets on the lymph nodes in my lungs, and coughing is not fun. Is there a way to drain lung fluid when it's on the inside of the lungs? Any other recommendations? Chemo seems to have irritated my lungs more. Well, yeah, I don't know your situation. I don't know your situation at all. But there's no fluid on the inside of the lung. If there's fluid on the like, in other words, any body part that's moving, like your joints, we have joint fluid, synovial fluid, right? We have it here. Any joint that moves, there's a fluid in there, right? And on your knee and all that, and so with lungs and heart, the heart is in a sac, and there's a part of the sac that grips the heart, and then there's another one around it, and in between is one little thin layer of fluid, kind of a slimy fluid, so the heart can beat and move like that without causing any friction and problems. The same with our lung. We have the thoracic pleura, which is on the chest wall, and then we have the lung pleura, which is on top of the lung, and then in between them is a little bit of fluid. So when you get fluid in the lungs, it's between those two layers, and it builds up, and it's called a pleural effusion. Very different than getting fluid inside. And you don't get fluid inside the lung, because inside the lung, the functional unit is called alveoli. They're these little teeny sacs. And when they get filled with something, it's called pneumonia. That's called pneumonia. So you don't get fluid in there. So I'm not sure what happened, but if you're coughing, it probably sounds like a pleural effusion, because that'll make you cough and make it hard to breathe, shortness of breath. That's what it'll do. And so anyway, any other recommendations? Yeah, there's a lot of things to do, but I think we should talk, because your situation is unknown to me. I don't know your situation, so I don't know how to respond. I don't know. So I've got to know you more before I can give advice, specific advice to your situation. Okay, so what do we tell a guy that has to take a hit before he goes to bed? I know it's a Band-Aid, but all this is easier said than done. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Take a hit, you mean of weed, right? That's fine. That's fine if that's what you're talking about, weed, when you take a hit. Yeah, that's fine, and that'll help you sleep. It shouldn't disturb anything. You should still get some good quality sleep from that, so I wouldn't be disturbed. I think that's what you mean. What does it mean if I normally wake up at 2 or 4 almost every night? Well, we don't know what that means because I'm not sure what that means because I don't know what time you go to bed. If you're going to bed at 7, then it's almost time to wake up. But if you're going to bed at 11 p.m. or 10 p.m., then that's not a lot. But what I can say is people that wake up and can't go back to sleep, uh, very often it's cortisol's being um, produced. Now, the way cortisol normally, uh, the normal cycles of cortisol are early in the morning. We get a peak around 7, 8 a.m. And then it goes down and hits the bottom right about 4, 5, 6 p.m. Right? And then right around 12:30, 1 o'clock a.m., it starts to go up. And that's kind of the cortisol cycle. But it just starts to go up. But if you started earlier, and so by 2 a.m., you're like, your cortisol's up, you're going to be awake. So that may be it. I don't know. But remember, cortisol is part of all that is part of the circadian rhythm. So your circadian rhythm may be off. Most likely is. And I don't know if you were in the past going to bed late and then, yeah. So you gotta, we should have a course on sleeping. I should develop a course on sleeping. It's very important. But I think it might be cortisol. So what I would recommend for this is make sure you're doing a lot of activity during the day. So you have some real fatigue. Make sure you're taking a lot of melatonin. And what I would also do is if you're waking up at 2 a.m., you keep some sublingual melatonin around. That's what I do, and you can, usually you can get that from Source Natural. I like that one. I like that brand. And you put 5 milligram tablets, put them under your tongue. So you wake up at 2, you go to the bathroom, and you find out you can't go back to sleep. Put 2 or 3 or 4 underneath your tongue. Fine, and you'll go to sleep soon. Yeah. Make sure the room is a little bit cool. Make sure you're not hot and sweating. Make sure you're comfortable. All those things. Sleep is very, very important. You're right. It's very, very important. So what happens when you don't sleep, not just one night, but not sleeping many, many, many nights in a row? Whoa. You're not sleeping at all. You can't go too long without sleeping. You can't. Remember, there's 2 kinds of sleep. There's restorative sleep and there is dream sleep. Restorative sleep is where our body is restoring the cells because of the wear and tear they've had all day long, and they need to be restored. And that only happens like during deeper levels of sleep, including delta brainwave sleep. And so the early part of the evening, from around, as soon as you go to sleep, you should go to sleep at 8 o'clock. And if you go to sleep at 8, you're going to have 3 good 90-minute cycles before your biological set point is turned on and your new biological day begins. That's usually around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 12:30 a.m., around there. Your biological new day begins at that point. Okay? So, and that's when you're going to produce your cortisol, you're going to produce all these things. And if you want all those cells and organs and glands to be working properly and to work optimally, then they need to have been restored. And they can only be restored as if they had a few cycles of restorative sleep. Because before that set point, that 90-minute cycle, about 80% is restorative sleep and 20% is dream sleep. After that set point at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., it's the opposite. The majority is dream sleep and a little bit of restorative. So you go to bed at 11, you wake up at 7, you still had 8 hours, but you had 8 hours and you had lots of dreaming, so you're not angry at the world, but you haven't restored everything. And if you don't dream 2-3 days in a row, which a lot of people say, well, I never dream. Well, that's not, it's just that you don't realize you never dream. I mean, you don't realize that you do dream because you're not waking up during a dream, right? If you don't wake up during a dream, you won't know it, that you dreamt. You won't remember it. But the way you know and I know that you dream is because you're not strangling everybody you see. Okay, because if you don't dream, you're just crazy angry, and you have no tolerance for anything, right? So, anyway, um, so you say you don't sleep at all. I don't know. Uh, I'm not sure what your name is there. It's hard to see, but not just one night, good, but not sleeping many nights in a row. You got to tell me about that. Yeah, I'd be really interested for you to get in touch with me or write more about it. Yeah, yeah, you're right. So why am I waking up at 4 a.m.? Well, it depends on what time you're going to sleep. And as I said, it could be cortisol. It could be that your whole clock is off. Yeah, no, the nitrates from beet juice are not at all the same as deli meats. No, no. Not at all. So the question is, are the nitrates from beet juice as harmful as metabolically as that? So, um, you know, beets are, pretty amazing. If you, beets and spinach, because we're talking about uh, the nutrients in there. Um, beets are like 14% uh, of the nutrients in there are protein, 83% are carbs, and about 3% are fats, right? And I always like to compare it to spinach because spinach is like 40% protein, uh, almost 50% carbs, and fat 10%. So spinach is pretty cool in that regard. But yeah, and they're both high in dietary fiber, and beets in dietary fiber and potassium. Um, but spinach has like 15 times less sugar than the beets. Um, anyway, spinach has got more B vitamins and things like that than beets. But beets are, they have vitamin A, they have vitamin E, they have vitamin K, they have all these things, and beets do have all the B vitamins, uh, calcium, potassium, flavonoids. There's flavonoids, right? The beets only have luteolin and quercetin. They don't really have all the other ones that spinach would have, but beets have that. So beets are a really good food, and I wouldn't worry about the nitrates. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about. Certainly not the same as deli meats. I mean, deli meats I mean, even the conventional people, even the people that like to eat corpses, even they agree, and all the studies show that the deli meats are extremely dangerous because of that. Um, the same with eating what they call red meat. I think it's all red. It's all red because if you were to pick up a chicken and rip it open with your knife, you'd find that it's all red meat. Um, but anyway, but anyway, so they say that the red meats are more uh, dangerous, and I think that's related to actually the iron from the hemoglobin, because as we all know, iron is very can be very dangerous. It causes oxidation, could cause free radical production, and all that sort of thing. So the brand of melatonin is called. Uh, Wait, what was it? I'm trying to think of seven things at once, so please forgive me. It's called Source Natural. Source Natural. It's great. It's great. Let me show you. I'm in a hotel here, so that was my bed right over there. But anyway, can you see this? Source natural. Source natural. Hard to see with the lighting. Anyway, cool. Little like this. Little under your tongue. Good stuff. So, anyway, so yeah, when you think about plants, the amount of nutrition in plants is mind-boggling. Flavonoids, proteins, fiber, all the macronutrients, all the micronutrients. It's just crazy, and the fiber. So it's just amazing. Your thoughts on taking PARP inhibitors after surgery has confirmed no evidence of active. Yeah. So no need, no need. There's many things you need to do after surgery, and you've gotten rid of all the, uh, 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 you've got all, whether it was a lumpectomy, you got clean margins or whatever you got, but there's nothing left. Nothing can be identified. If you did a scan, it would be clean. Yeah, you don't do that. What you do at this point now is you detoxify, you cleanse, you do all those really important things. You get the vitamin C going, you sip 7 to 7, 8 to 10 grams, right? And you get intravenous vitamin C, and if you're taking it so that you've met all your physiological requirements, right? You're doing that. Uh, so if you're doing that, and you're taking high dose vitamin C, and you get those, so like maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, it's unbelievable. That's so much more important. Plus, you should be taking vitamin A and D, and vitamin, and you'll get also K2. Take these vitamins, and I mean, iodine. There's a lot of things you can be doing. We can go into and take. I would also, if you had surgery, right away get on Pectisol, which is modified citrus pectin, because that's going to prevent decreased galactin-3, because galactin-3 travels down the blood vessels and allows any cells that might have come loose during the surgery. It allows the galactin-3 allows them to stick to the wall of the blood vessel or stick to the wall of the lymph vessel and go in and potentially set up camp there. So anyway, the Pectisol will decrease that, modified citrus pectin. Yes, here I have you, Rhonda. Have you studied any of Dr. Hammer's stuff in New German Medicine? I find it very powerful to unravel the conflicts. However, most people struggle with fear. They fail to trust the body's amazing ability to heal. Yeah, I mean, New German Medicine, Dr. Hammer is incredible stuff. Very amazing and very, very important. And not everybody has access to this kind of thing, Rhonda. So the problem is that not everybody has access to that or can go to find a practitioner that can help them with it. So what I like to always remind people is that we have the ability to get out of the drama, get out of our perception of any kind of conflict that didn't get resolved. We can get out of that by turning our minds off, right? By turning our minds off. And you do that through meditation, which is just learning to shut up. How do we shut up? Because as you all know, it's very, very difficult to shut up. It's it's almost impossible, right? Like if someone said to you, okay, I'll give you $50 million if you stop thinking for 1 minute. Can't do it. Can't do it. 30 seconds, can't do it. Because thinking is not a voluntary process, it's a happening. Okay? Thinking is an involuntary process. And because no one decides to think. Thinking happens just like your heart beats, just like your glands are secreting, all that. So your thinking happens, and the problem is we don't know 90% of it. It's subconscious, and we know that there's a lot of negativity in there, and we know that our immune system is following the mind, right? Because sadness and fear and anger and envy and regret, all those things suppress the immune system. So basically, our mind, as long as we're thinking, it's like we have our foot on the brake, and we're like, our immune system is just down. It's being subdued. It's being subdued by thinking, because 80% of human thinking is negative. And we don't know it. We don't know it. 90% of our thoughts are subconscious. They're not there. So thinking is, and as the only place you ever suffer is in your mind. So anyway, if you want to take the brakes off of your immune system, you stop thinking, turn it off. And meditation does that. And you can do that. There are many people that go and learn transcendental meditation where you can get a mantra. There's other places where you can get a mantra. A mantra is a sound. It's just a sound. It's a vibratory sound that actually is more than just a sound. Because remember, what is sound? What is the universe? The universe is frequencies. Okay? So sound frequencies are more fundamental than even electromagnetic frequencies. They're more fundamental, right? And anyway, that's why the fundamental vibration of frequency is Om. Om. It's very fundamental. And it's interesting. You get like 10 people, 20 people in a room doing Om, and within 3 seconds, 10 seconds, they're all in harmony. It's pretty amazing. But anyway, what that does is just to slow down the mind and to get the mind onto that. So those mantras are they're not actually just sounds, because they're from the Sanskrit language. They're actually, if I can use the word places, they're vibratory states of being. And they're very, very, it takes away all that nonsense. Because when I used to practice psychology, when I was a psychologist before I went to medical school, I realized that you're not going to fix the mind, because the mind by itself, in and of itself, the mind by definition is the problem. That's the problem, because the mind is a place of only illusion, right? Because the mind is symbols, right? Words and pictures are symbols. Right? The word chair and the picture of a chair is not a chair. It's a symbol of a chair. So the mind uses symbols to represent reality. So it's not a real place. And then again, the mind can only think in time. It can think about what's going to happen, what did happen, what could happen, what should happen, what should have happened, what could have happened, what might happen, and if. Okay, and none of that is real. So that's why I say the mind is just a place of unreality, and that's a very painful place to be. And believe me, no matter how much you like your mind, you don't want to be alone with it. You want to share it somehow. You don't want to be alone with your mind. The minute you're alone, you grab a book, or you turn on your computer, you turn on your TV, you turn on your phone, you do something, or you sing, or you hum, or you do anything not to be alone with your mind, right? So people that are in prison would rather be in general population and risk being beaten up and raped rather than be in solitary confinement, because you're alone with your mind. So anyway, the mind is just, because it's flopping all over the place real quickly, going nowhere. Right. So anyway, just turning it off. So one easy one is you listen to your breathing. Just close your eyes, sit up straight, listen to your breathing. Just listen. With 100% attention, you're going to find your mind flies away. Then as soon as you know it, come back to your breathing. And then your mind's going to fly away and then come back. And if you can eventually get to 15 seconds, that's a long, where you're not thinking. You won't know it until you come out of it. Because while that's happening, while you're not thinking, you're not there to know it. You have to understand that. So, and then a minute. If you get to a minute, you get to So again, everybody, 5 times a day for 2 minutes. Stop thinking. Try it. Try it. Try it. Try it. Yes, you can still take the modified citrus pectin after 6 weeks. Yeah. Absolutely. And you can take it all the time anyway, because it's going to lower galactin-3. Galactin-3 is also an inflammatory marker. In fact, it's used in cardiology. Cardiologists look at galactin-3, right? Because you all have heard probably of C-reactive protein, CRP. Um, can you take melatonin if you have had a stroke? Absolutely, you can take it, and you should. You need it. It's reparative. It's an antioxidant, and it's an anti-inflammatory melatonin. Powerful, powerful thing. And your body makes it anyway. It's just that we make less and less and less. The more our pineal gland becomes calcified and fluoridated. Yeah. All right. And another good thing about melatonin is since it's neural tissue, it's brain, it's nervous tissue. It's not like the other hormones. So, for example, the whole idea of birth control pills is if you give a birth control pill where you're giving lots of estrogens that are synthetic estrogens, it's your brain, your hypothalamus is saying, oh, wow, we already got estrogen. We don't need to make it. So you don't make it. You don't ovulate. And that's how that works. So basically, it will shut down that pathway. Same with testosterone. You're giving somebody testosterone, like the bodybuilders who like to take extra testosterone. They're getting shots of testosterone every week, and eventually their testicles atrophy, their testicles shrink because they're not making testosterone anymore. So hormones, if you take hormones, it shuts down your machinery to do it, unless you're doing physiological biologically identical hormones to replace what you can no longer produce, because you're already gone through andropause or menopause. That's not the same thing at all that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, taking it for some therapeutic reason, such as birth control pills or excess testosterone, so that you can, look like an insect. A lot of people like to look like insects. I'm not sure why, but big bubbly thing. Anyway, so when you do that, you shut off your normal mechanisms. But that doesn't happen with melatonin because it's not like that. It's almost like a neurotransmitter. I mean, it isn't, but it's almost like that because it's produced by nervous tissue. It's not the same as the other ones. So no matter how much you take of melatonin, when you're in darkness, when you get below a certain level of light, then you start producing melatonin, because melatonin is on the same pathway biochemically as serotonin, right? Starts out as tryptophan, which is an amino acid, goes to serotonin. When the lights are on, when the lights go off, it goes to melatonin. So you'll make as much as you normally would make at night, even though you take extra. How much should you take? Well, I take 80 milligrams orally, and then I take 4 sublinguals. You can take a lot, and you should take a lot, because it's amazing. Just go to PubMed and look up melatonin and the immune system, melatonin and cancer and all that. You'll be very, very happy you did it. Anyway, guys, you know what? It's like, wow. All right. Anyway, I'll see you next week. I'll still be here in this country, and I'll see you next week. Sawadee Kap, and namaste, and aloha to everyone. Have a good week, you guys. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. I love sharing information, and I hope I didn't bully anybody, and I hope I didn't offend anybody.